Welcome to Understanding the Bible with Pastor Stephen. This is Season 3, Episode 6, Gods, Humans, Aliens, and Ghosts. So by definition, an ancient god is a superhuman being or spirit that was worshipped as having power over nature or human fortunes, a deity. They're a being that is beyond human beings' comprehension as far as current knowledge or science. So they would not be able to understand the miracles, the supernatural things that those beings did, because by definition, above the natural, supernatural means science and humans cannot understand it. So oftentimes these deities were invisible. They had magical capabilities. They had power to create. They would do miracles to heal people and so on. And all sorts of things in regards to war as well, and even nature. So we're going to go into some of the cultural examples, all right? And I'm just going to list some gods here, and I'm by no means am I giving an exhaustive list here. So if you enjoy mythology and studying some of these ancient cultures, I'll probably miss ones that you're aware of, okay? Just so you know, I cannot do every ancient god in one or two podcasts. But we're going to start with the Egyptian gods. There was Osiris, the god of the underworld, so the dead. Isis was his wife. She was similar to the Greek goddess Aphrodite. Horus was their son. He was the sky god, depicted as a falcon, a god of hunting and war. And keep in mind when I talk about all these, notice how often you will see that these gods and goddesses were half human and half something else, or depicted as animals. Okay, Seth was the god of chaos. He was dog-like, or a human form with the head of this dog. Ptah was the god of craftsmen and builders, educated people, helped them to build great things. Re, or I've heard other people pronounce it Ra, was the sun god. Anubis was depicted as a jackal, and this was the embalmer or funeral god prior to Osiris. It was assumed that he was the most powerful deity of the underworld. Thoth is shown as a baboon or with the head of an ibis. He was considered to be the god of wisdom and writing, the inventor of hieroglyphic script. Bastet was a god that had the head of a lion or a cat. And then you'll see a lot of more recent Egyptian archaeological finds was actual cats revered. Well, that was because of Bastet. Ammon or Ammon was the god of the air, regarded as the hidden one, that eventually merged with Ra, the sun god. So those are a lot of the different ones from ancient Egypt. Now, of course, if you remember the 10 plagues of Egypt that God did when he freed the Israelites, each of those actually was associated with one of the great gods that they worshiped during that time. So that has an interesting side note there. Then the ones that most people have probably read about in school or have seen in the movies and stuff is the Greek and Roman gods. All right, we have the goddess Aphrodite. She was had to do with love, sex, and beauty. And then Artemis was the huntress and protector of the living. She is associated with the Roman deity Diana. So they were like the same, just in different cultures. And then Ares was the god of bloodlust, and he enjoyed sacrifices of dogs. Now, this one, when I studied this one, kind of made me think a lot about the religion of Islam. And I did a couple of podcasts on that in the past, is the bloodlust. I mean, the war, the self-sacrifice, the beheading, the tortures, some of their rituals that they do where they actually take young boys and teach them to strike their head with a hatchet or a knife until there's rivers of blood flowing on the street. And it's like a dance and a huge thing that they do. And then so the bloodlust kind of fits in here with their worship of Allah. And then the number one animal that Muslims enjoy killing is dogs. They say that they're dirty creatures. And they actually do not allow people to have dogs. Like, they will hunt them down and kill them. I don't know if you knew that, but Islam is pretty sick. And then there's a lot that I've seen as far as being a soldier and being overseas that, I mean, I didn't go overseas, don't get me wrong on that, but from the people in my unit and soldiers that I talked to that were there, the things that they did to dogs is just despicable. They enjoy sacrificing dogs. So in my head, I'm thinking that this Ares maybe showed himself to Muhammad and called himself Allah in the Arabic language. I don't know. Just a thought there. But the god of bloodlust, Ares, in Rome, he was called Mars. Okay, and then we have Apollo, the son of Zeus. He revealed his will through oracles. And then Demeter was an agricultural goddess of mystery. And they formed what is called the Eleusinian Mysteries, where people were initiated in stages into her religion with yearly pilgrimages and promises of status in the afterlife. People still to this day do not know what the initiates had to perform in their rituals in these Eleusinian mysteries. So this one's just very interesting if you study cultures. A lot of cultures have the mysterious, and the gods that they worship and secret rites and rituals, right? So that one's very interesting. And then there's another one, Dionysus, the son of Zeus, born to a mortal mother. So here's Zeus sleeping with a human. Intoxication, sex, and sacrifices is what he is associated with, depicted as a bull. And his equivalent in Rome was Bacchus, the god of wine. Then we have Hades, the god of the dead. He was known for his cunning. Poseidon was the god of the sea and horses. He fathered a winged horse, the Pegasus, I believe it's called, and a cyclops. And his Roman equivalent is Neptune. So that one's rather interesting. And then Zeus overthrew Cronus. He became the chief deity among his siblings and children. And he controlled the weather, god of the sky and thunder. So I'm thinking, when I think of Zeus, sky and thunder, I think of lightning bolts as well. And then he had a weakness for mortal women. So another god who slept with human women. And his Roman equivalent is Jupiter. Then we have Hermes. Roman equivalent is Mercury. He was the god of translators and interpreters, and he was the most clever of the Olympian gods and served as a messenger for all the other gods. So there's a lot of cool ones in there, and pay special attention to Mercury and Jupiter, those two Roman gods. All right, then we had some Norse gods. Now, this is where it gets fascinating if you're really into studying the magic and the folklore and the mythology and stuff of ancient cultures. The Norse gods, they actually had a race of giants, and I am not Scandinavian or from the Norse, religion, so I don't know how to say all this stuff, all right? But the Jotnar was a race of giants. They also had elves, dwarves, and magical animals, as well as monsters that these gods were involved in creating. All right. They had two basic groups of gods. They had the warrior gods, the Aesir, and the Vanir, which were the fertility gods. Freyr was the horned god of fertility. A boar is associated with him. He's known as the king of the elves, or the elves. So that one's pretty cool. And then, and I say this stuff because I grew up like reading mythology and magic books and things like that. Not that I think any of it is actually good, but it's very interesting and fascinating to look at the correlation in cultures and to imagine what it might have been like if you actually encountered one of these as they did a miracle or their magic, right? It's very interesting to think about, and of course, how that would affect you when you study this stuff in history. Then there was another Norse one, which was Magni, the son of Thor, and a giantess, Jarnsaxa. So now the gods were getting into the crossbreeding with giants, okay? Golvaig was the goddess of gold. She was burned to death 3 times and reborn. Heimdall was the watchman of the gods. He was associated with the sea, and he was known for wooing human women and thereby creating 3 new races of men. So I'm thinking of these elves and dwarves and the giants and such. Now, I don't know how deep that mythology goes, but it's very interesting that they say that these gods created things, right? Different races of beings. And this is another interesting thing. He owns a horn that can be heard in all of the 9 worlds that they believe in when he blows it. So when this god, the watchman of the gods, blows a horn, everybody hears it around the world. Then we have Loki. You've probably heard of him, the trickster. He was born from 2 giants, and he likes to create problems and then the solutions to the problems for the different gods. He's also pops up in Native American mythology as the trickster. And then we have Odin, or depending on the dialect, it's called Woden or Wotan. He was the father of all the gods and men. He was a god of magic, wisdom, wit, and learning. And in later times, he was associated with war and bloodshed from the Viking perspective, and he required human sacrifices. Thor was the god of war, thunder, and strength, and he destroyed the enemies of the gods with his magic hammer. Now, his hammer, Mjolnir, I think it's called, is what is associated with the modern mythology of Thor, where even in ancient Norse mythology, the lightning flashes when he would hurl his hammer in battle. And then, of course, the rolling thunder that you would hear as a result of that was actually the rumble of his fiery chariot. Think about where you've heard some of these things, because it'll come up later. So he married Sif, a human woman. So we've got a common theme going through all this stuff, right? We've got the different half-breeds of animals and such. And then the fact that many of these gods loved to have sex with human beings and then had offspring by them is what this mythology is. And this comes from all the mythologies around the world. Well, I shouldn't say all, but many of them, right? And then we get into some of the other ones that don't really deal with the ancient gods that I'm talking about in this podcast, but the American Indians and then African tribes and such, many of them worship one particular spirit. Some American Indian tribes called it the Great Spirit, similar to the God of the Bible who created everything. Now, worship of nature or totems, worship of animals, not really pertinent to ancient gods that took human form that I'm talking about. But they did worship the trickster. The Blackfeet, the Crow Indians called him the Old Man. The Lakota Indians called him the Iktomi. And then the Cheyenne Indians called him Viho. So it's Loki. All of the aspects of this god, Norse god, are in the trickster or the Old Man here. And then the Blackfeet, this is really interesting. The Blackfeet Indians in Southern America actually believed in sky beings. And they had a plural god, the Apistatoki, which was known as the source of all life. And he created the sky beings. The sky beings were the different gods and goddesses, the sun, the moon, the stars. So that one's got some biblical overtones to it. Okay, because remember in the Bible, and I'll bring this up again with actual verses later, is that in the Bible, the angels are called the stars. So I kind of lean towards the Blackfeet understanding of angels here, and then the plural God who created them all, which is pretty cool.